Imagine a place where the knowledge of the entire ancient world was gathered in one location. A place filled with scrolls containing philosophy, science, astronomy, medicine, poetry, and stories from civilizations long forgotten by time. This place truly existed. It was known as the Library of Alexandria. For centuries, it stood as the greatest center of knowledge humanity had ever created. Scholars traveled across deserts and seas to study within its halls. Inside its walls, ideas were exchanged, discoveries were recorded, and knowledge from many cultures was brought together. It was more than a library. It was a symbol of humanity's desire to understand the world. But one day, this extraordinary institution disappeared. Its scrolls vanished. Its halls fell silent. And historians still debate what truly happened. Was it destroyed in a single catastrophic fire? Or did the world slowly allow its greatest treasure of knowledge to fade into history? Tonight, we explore the mystery of the lost Library of Alexandria. More than 2,000 years ago, Alexandria was one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. Founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, the city quickly became a powerful center of trade, culture, and intellectual life. Its location on the Mediterranean coast connected the civilizations of Greece, Egypt, Persia, and lands far beyond. Ships arrived every day from distant regions of the ancient world. They carried spices, precious metals, rare goods, and sometimes exotic animals. But they also carried something even more valuable: knowledge. Alexandria soon became a meeting place for scholars, philosophers, mathematicians, and travelers from many different cultures. Languages mixed together in its markets, and new ideas spread quickly through its schools and academies. The rulers of Egypt recognized the unique opportunity the city offered. They wanted Alexandria to become more than a great port or a wealthy capital. They wanted it to become the intellectual center of the entire world. And to achieve that vision, they would create one of the most extraordinary institutions in history. The vision for the Library of Alexandria is often linked to one powerful ruler: Ptolemy I. He had once been a trusted general under Alexander the Great. After Alexander's empire was divided, Ptolemy became the ruler of Egypt and began shaping Alexandria into the center of his kingdom. But Ptolemy understood something important. True power did not come only from armies or wealth. It also came from knowledge. If Alexandria could become the home of the world's greatest scholars and thinkers, it would also become the intellectual heart of civilization. To achieve this dream, he ordered the creation of a remarkable institution known as the Mouseion, or the Temple of the Muses. This complex would include lecture halls, gardens, research spaces, and living quarters for scholars. At its center would stand a library unlike anything the world had ever seen. Its mission was ambitious and bold: to gather every piece of written knowledge that existed in the known world. The rulers of Alexandria were determined to collect knowledge from every corner of the ancient world. To accomplish this goal, they introduced a remarkable policy. Every ship that entered the harbor of Alexandria was carefully inspected by officials. If scrolls or books were discovered on board, they were taken temporarily to the Great Library. There, skilled scribes copied the texts by hand. Once the copies were finished, the copies were returned to the ship's owners. But the original manuscripts remained in Alexandria. Over time, this unusual practice allowed the library's collection to grow at an extraordinary speed. Scrolls arrived from Greece, Egypt, Persia, India, and many other distant regions. Philosophy, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, poetry, and history filled the shelves. Some ancient writers claimed the library eventually held as many as 700,000 scrolls. For the ancient world, it was a treasure of knowledge beyond imagination. At its height, the Library of Alexandria attracted some of the greatest minds of the ancient world. Scholars traveled from distant lands to study, teach, and exchange ideas within its halls. Many of them journeyed across deserts and seas, drawn by the reputation of Alexandria as the greatest center of knowledge on earth. Inside the library, learning was not limited to a single subject. mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, literature, and geography were all studied together. Scholars shared ideas, debated theories, and carefully recorded new discoveries. Among the many brilliant thinkers connected to Alexandria was Euclid, whose work on geometry would influence mathematics for more than 2,000 years. Astronomers carefully observed the movement of the stars and planets, attempting to understand the structure of the universe. Physicians studied ancient medical texts while experimenting with new ideas about the human body and healing. Philosophers gathered in courtyards and lecture halls to debate questions about nature, ethics, and the meaning of life. Within these walls, knowledge was not only preserved, it was constantly growing. The Library of Alexandria became more than a place of books. It became the beating intellectual heart of the ancient world, where ideas from many civilizations came together to shape the future of human knowledge. During its golden age, the Library of Alexandria became the greatest center of learning the ancient world had ever known. Within its vast halls and quiet study rooms, scholars worked day and night surrounded by thousands upon thousands of scrolls. Knowledge from many civilizations was stored here, carefully organized and preserved. Students and thinkers from across the Mediterranean traveled to Alexandria in search of wisdom. Some came to study mathematics and astronomy, while others focused on medicine, philosophy, or literature. The library was not simply a place where old texts were stored, it was a place where new knowledge was constantly being created. Scholars debated ideas, questioned ancient theories, and recorded their discoveries onto fresh papyrus scrolls. In lecture halls and shaded courtyards, discussions about science, philosophy, and the nature of the universe could last for hours. The rulers of Egypt supported these scholars with housing, food, and resources so they could dedicate their lives entirely to study and research. For generations, this remarkable environment allowed knowledge to flourish. In many ways, the Library of Alexandria became the first true research institution in human history. A place where curiosity was encouraged, ideas were shared freely, and the pursuit of understanding was seen as one of humanity's greatest goals. For many years, people believed that the Library of Alexandria was destroyed completely during the fires caused by Julius Caesar. But historians are no longer certain that this was the end of the library. Some ancient sources suggest that while warehouses near the harbor were damaged, the main library itself may have survived. In fact, evidence indicates that scholars continued working in Alexandria for many years after Caesar's time. Philosophers still taught students. Scientists still studied the stars. And scribes continued copying ancient manuscripts. If the great library had truly vanished in a single night of fire, these activities would likely have disappeared as well. Instead, the story appears to be far more complicated. Rather than one sudden catastrophe, the decline of the Library of Alexandria may have happened slowly over centuries. And the forces that eventually destroyed it were far more powerful than a single fire. Although the fire during Julius Caesar's time is often mentioned in the story of the Library of Alexandria, many historians believe that the library did not disappear in a single dramatic event. Instead, its decline may have happened slowly, over many generations. Empires rise and fall, and with them the institutions they support. As political power in Egypt changed, the royal funding that had once supported the library and its scholars began to weaken. The rulers who followed the early Ptolemies did not always share the same passion for learning and intellectual life. Without strong support, the library's influence may have gradually faded. Buildings required constant maintenance. Papyrus scrolls were fragile and needed careful preservation. Without scholars to copy and protect them, manuscripts could slowly decay and disappear. At the same time, new centers of learning were emerging in other parts of the ancient world. Scholars began traveling to different cities where new opportunities for study and teaching existed. Over time, Alexandria may have lost its position as the undisputed intellectual capital of the Mediterranean. The great halls that once echoed with discussion and discovery may have grown quieter. And the world's greatest library may have begun its long journey into history. By the 4th century AD, the Roman world was changing rapidly. New religious beliefs were spreading across the empire, and the old traditions of the ancient world were beginning to fade. In Alexandria, this transition was not always peaceful. The city had long been a place where many cultures and ideas existed side by side. Greek philosophy, Egyptian traditions, and new religious movements all shared the same streets. But as tensions grew, conflicts sometimes erupted between different groups. Ancient temples were closed or destroyed. Philosophical schools struggled to survive, and institutions connected to the older traditions of learning may have faced increasing pressure. Some historians believe that during this period of religious conflict, parts of Alexandria's great centers of learning, including the famous library, may have suffered serious damage. Yet the exact fate of the library remains uncertain. Because by this time, its story had already begun to fade into legend. Today, when people hear the story of the Library of Alexandria, they often imagine a single dramatic moment. A massive fire. Towering flames. Thousands of ancient scrolls disappearing in a single night. But the reality may have been far more complicated. Many historians now believe that the library was not destroyed all at once. Instead, its disappearance may have been the result of several different events spread across many centuries. Some scrolls may have been lost during fires in the city. Others may have disappeared during wars, political upheavals, or religious conflicts. But there is another possibility as well. Ancient manuscripts were fragile. Papyrus slowly deteriorates over time if it is not carefully preserved and copied by scribes. Without constant effort to maintain them, scrolls could simply decay and vanish. Libraries require protection, funding, and scholars who are willing to dedicate their lives to preserving knowledge. If that support disappears, even the greatest collections can slowly fade away. So the destruction of the Library of Alexandria may not have been a single catastrophe. It may have been something far quieter. A slow disappearance, a gradual fading of humanity's greatest collection of knowledge into the silence of history. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the Library of Alexandria is not only how it disappeared, but what knowledge may have vanished with it. The library contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls gathered from across the ancient world. Philosophical works from Greece. Scientific studies from Egypt. Mathematical discoveries from brilliant scholars. Astronomical observations recorded by ancient scientists. Medical texts describing early understandings of the human body. Many of these works were copied and preserved in other places. But many others may have existed only in Alexandria. Entire books, discoveries, and ideas may have been lost forever when the library declined. We may never know how many scientific insights, historical records, or philosophical ideas vanished with those fragile scrolls. And that possibility continues to fascinate historians even today. When we think about the Library of Alexandria, one question always returns. What discoveries might have been lost? Within its walls were texts from many of the greatest thinkers of the ancient world. Scholars studied astronomy, mathematics, medicine, engineering, and philosophy. Some historians believe that early scientists in Alexandria had already begun developing ideas that were centuries ahead of their time. Astronomers carefully mapped the stars and planets. Mathematicians explored geometry and complex calculations. Engineers experimented with mechanical devices and inventions. Physicians studied anatomy and early medical treatments. Many of these discoveries survived in later texts. But others may have existed only within the fragile scrolls stored in Alexandria. If those manuscripts disappeared, entire chapters of human knowledge may have vanished with them. And we may never know exactly what they contained. Even after centuries of study, the fate of the Library of Alexandria remains one of history's most fascinating mysteries. Ancient writers left only fragments of information, and those accounts often contradict one another. Some historians blamed the fires during Julius Caesar's time in Alexandria. Others suggested that the library survived those events but slowly declined as political power shifted and royal support faded away. There are also records describing religious conflicts in the city centuries later, when temples and cultural institutions connected to the old traditions were destroyed. Some scholars believe these events may have damaged what remained of the library's collections. But the truth is that historians simply do not have enough evidence to be certain. The Library of Alexandria may not have vanished in a single moment of destruction. Instead, it may have faded away gradually over generations. Scrolls deteriorated. Buildings changed purpose. Scholars moved to other centers of learning across the Mediterranean world. And slowly, the greatest library of the ancient world disappeared from history. What remains today are only scattered references in ancient texts and the enduring legend of what the library once represented. A place where humanity gathered its knowledge in one extraordinary place, and a mystery that scholars continue to explore even today. Although the original Library of Alexandria is gone, the search for its lost knowledge has never truly ended. Archaeologists, historians, and researchers continue to study ancient manuscripts discovered across Egypt and the Mediterranean world. Fragments of papyrus have been found buried in desert sands, hidden in forgotten archives, and preserved in distant libraries. Some texts that once existed in Alexandria may have survived through copies made by later scholars. Others may still lie undiscovered, waiting to be found. Every new fragment offers a small glimpse into the intellectual world of the ancient past. And with each discovery, historians come a little closer to understanding what the Library of Alexandria once contained. Yet even with modern technology and centuries of research, much of its knowledge may remain forever lost. But its legacy continues to inspire the pursuit of knowledge today. The Library of Alexandria may have vanished long ago, but its story still echoes through history. For centuries, it represented one of humanity's greatest achievements, a place where knowledge from across the known world was gathered, studied, and preserved. Within its halls, scholars explored mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and literature. They asked questions about the universe, about nature, and about humanity's place within the world. Many of the ideas studied in Alexandria would influence generations of thinkers for centuries to come. And yet, much of what the library once contained may have been lost forever. Fragile papyrus scrolls can disappear easily. Wars, time, and neglect can erase even the greatest collections of knowledge. But the dream that inspired the Library of Alexandria did not disappear with its walls. Today, libraries, universities, and research centers around the world continue the same mission that began in that ancient city: to gather knowledge, to protect it, and to pass it forward to future generations. Every book written, every discovery recorded, and every idea shared becomes part of that same long tradition. Because the pursuit of knowledge never truly ends. And as long as humanity continues to search for understanding, the echoes of Alexandria will never completely fade.